Hello, you're watching the Crypto Roundup on Proactive. Billy Farrington standing by with all the latest crypto news. Billy, how did the Bitcoin chart look this week?
Yes, hello, Stephen. Always a pleasure. Well, how did the Bitcoin chart look this week? A lot less volatile than the craziness that we saw last week. If you recall, there was just some wild price swings last week. It did cool down substantially more in the week that just was, even though it was a bit of an underwhelming week for Bitcoin in general. So, like as we speak now, Bitcoin is around 6% lower against the US dollar since the last time we spoke on Friday. It's more or less stepped lower kind of day after day. Apart from Tuesday, where we did see some gains, we saw about 2%, Bitcoin jump about 2% against the US dollar. And that came at the same time as the US wholesale inflation print on Tuesday, which was showed that inflation kind of came down, at the wholesale level, came down less than expected. So always a good news for the risk assets. And that wholesale inflation data set the stage for the general consumer prices inflation data on Wednesday, which also came in slightly lower than expected, which is kind of also generally seen as good news for like risk assets. But Bitcoin kind of didn't really see much. In fact, on the day, Bitcoin actually fell against the US dollar. And that was a bit of a surprise since it generally likes these softer than expected inflation prints. But nonetheless, the bears took charge and Bitcoin was bid lower. And that has sort of continued for the rest of the week. I mean, if anything, this macro data this week has improved the chances of a rate cuts in September, which we would hope would be a pretty good tailwind for the markets in general. But in the meantime, we're looking at Bitcoin at about just below $58,000 on the Bitcoin USD pair. And we could potentially look at that 58K as a bit of a resistance point right now. I had a look at the Binance order book, and there are a lot of sell orders at the 58K mark. So in the short term, that might be sort of a bit of a battleground for where Bitcoin's going to move next.
Billy, why do you think Bitcoin failed to lift on these consumer inflation figures?
Yeah, well, there could be some sort of more technical reasons behind it, perhaps, and it's all down to stable coins. Now, I was looking at some data from a data analytics platform Into the Block, and it said that on Tuesday, uh, we saw about $1 billion in Tether stablecoin outflows, as in $1 billion of redemptions out of the Tether stablecoin protocol. It has the biggest outflow since May. Now, that probably might not mean a lot to a lot of people, but why does it matter? Well, stable coins, of which Tether is by far the largest, is generally looked at as a bit of an on ramp from fiat to crypto. You can look at it as sort of dry powder. Crypto traders and Bitcoin traders tend to on ramp from fiat to crypto through the likes of Tether and other stable coins, but generally Tether. And because of that, we can look at the amount of the market cap of stable coins like Tether as sort of a proxy on how much dry powder is ready to be deployed into the wider crypto markets, including Bitcoin. And when we see that dry powder go down, that can be looked at as a bit of a bear signal, a bit of a signal that the markets have a lower risk appetite and they're being a bit more conservative with their bets. And that's sort of what we saw this week. And as you can expect, the markets kind of wouldn't really look at that very positively. So that, in my view, could have been one of the main reasons why we saw Bitcoin decline, 5-6% this week. So a bit more of a technical reason, but nonetheless something that I think people should keep their eyes on.
Billy, recent comments from the Democratic Party suggest crypto support may be more bipartisan than previously thought.
Yes, as is seems to be standard in the US, everything has to be political, doesn't it? Everything has to be sort of down political lines, left and right, Republican, Democrat, blue, red, etc., etc. I mean, let's face it, the US isn't the only one to do that. We quite like those sorts of things in the UK as well. But nonetheless, Trump, obviously being the Republican presidential nominee, he really has made a big push into making himself the candidate of choice for the crypto community. He's said some really positive comments about crypto. He says he wants to relax regulation or improve regulation and make it more, make the US more attractive for the cryptocurrency industry. And he's been, he's attacked the Democrats as being, the anti-cryptos who want to steal your bag and send everyone to prison if you dare trade a Bitcoin. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but nonetheless. So, Trump has been trying to position himself as the pro crypto guy, but there was a meeting this week between various Democrat politicians and their affiliated supporters, one including Mark Cuban, where they discussed crypto legislation, and there was a lot of positive commentary to come out of this meeting. Now, I can tell you one from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who said, "We all believe in the future of crypto." He wants to make a common sense and sound regulation on crypto. He wants people's support to make sure that these proposals are bipartisan, right? And others sort of were pushing for lawmakers and whatnot to come to the table and try and figure this whole thing out and see if we can kind of do a cross-bench, more or less policy drive to clear up all the regulatory uncertainties around the crypto industry. And there seemed to be a bit of a outreach across the benches to try and just get some bipartisan acknowledgement of this sector. Now, given the partisanship of US politics, like who knows if that's ever going to happen, but at least it kind of shows that the Democrats are perhaps taking the crypto industry a bit more seriously, and potentially in order to sort of curry votes from the large crypto community, potentially are looking at being a bit more kind of liberal or a bit more open-minded on the industry in general, where previously they've been fairly hawkish. So yeah, it's quite interesting. Perhaps when these presidential debates occur over the next couple of months, Bitcoin and crypto could be like a major point of debate, and that would be something that we've never seen before. So that would be interesting, I think.
Well, I say roll on November, Billy. Thanks very much, as always, for your insights.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.